The views, comments, stories, and opinions shared within this podcast are our own, or those of our guests, and in no way represent the views of the companies, associations, or organizations that any of us may work for or represent. All stories, events, and tales shared within this episode may or may not have happened in the manner in which they were told. They may or may not have even happened at all. The details have been changed to protect the innocent and the guilty alike. This is Squawk Ident. You're listening to Squawk Ident, an aviation podcast that explores the many pathways to an aviation profession, the challenges that a professional aviator can expect in today's marketplace, and we share many stories along the way. I'm your host, Aviator Tony, a professional airline captain currently flying for a U.S. legacy airline with close to, over 20 years on the flight line. Welcome aboard Flight 143 of the Squawk Ident podcast, recorded on the 12th of February, 2024, from the Aviator Sound Studios from somewhere in Southern California. On today's flight, Rob, Alex, and I discuss go-arounds and when you should do them, how the FAA is pushing back on the potential age 65 rule, and we also have the honor in speaking with a guest who started his aviation career at Seneca College in Toronto, Canada, where he earned himself a bachelor's in aviation technology in flight. After being selected into the Jazz Cadet program, he successfully completed the program and was offered a position as a first officer on the Dash 8 100 and 300 series at Jazz Aviation. He completed his license conversions and residency requirements and attained a position at Legacy Airlines very recently as a first officer on the A321 family of aircraft. We will explore Brian Norgorski's journey and much more on this, the 143rd episode of the Squawk Ident podcast. Before we start the show, I would like to thank Olivia for joining us on episode 142, Aviation Networking. We had a great time hearing about her journey in aviation and hearing all about her experiences in this process of getting hired. We also want to say congratulations on successfully passing your interview at Sandpiper. Well, joining us today is a superb aviator and Squawk Ident podcast co-host. He's a former international professional racquetball champion, a member of the 9G Club, an AMP and avionics tech, RC aircraft commander, a boat skipper, a commercial drone operator, and currently an Airbus captain for Legacy Airlines. The name we use here on the show is an alias to our employer, a U.S. mainline carrier. Joining us from his mobile podcast studio high atop the third floor of the Marriott Hotel in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where he is recovering from maintenance delays and go-arounds south of the border. Help us in welcoming our very own Captain Rob B. Rob, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. Just good to be back here in the saddle here on the podcast. I've missed quite a few. Busy life, and here I am.
Yeah. Well, you were telling us, you look tired. I'm sorry to say it. You look tired. And thank you so much for joining us. I know you've been very dedicated to trying to make it to every single episode. And I too have been pretty busy with everything that life has thrown my way as well. And so I can absolutely appreciate you taking the time from your schedule after recovering from the go around south of the border. Tell me about that.
Yeah, we had a go-around yesterday, flying into, everybody has a hard time saying this airport in Mexico, called Oaxaca.
Oaxaca.
Right? Have you ever, Oaxaca.
Oaxaca.
And yeah, we were on the approach. We were literally just probably a half a mile outside the final approach fix. And the tower said, all right, in their Spanish language with the accent and everything, Legacy so-and-so, go around, climb and maintain 12,000 and fly the published missed approach procedure. So we were like, oh boy, here we go. So, went through the litany, decided to just keep the airplane configured in config 1 because we just wanted to say like 180 knots. And we climbed up to 12,000 and came around and flew the approach again. And the reason why they wanted us to go around was there was a medevac aircraft that just checked on with the controller on the ground, and he wanted to get off the ground ASAP. Mm-hmm. So they were like, all right, you're cleared to go. So as a matter of, and so as we were actually climbing up over the airport, we actually got a traffic alert from that airplane that took off. And as we were climbing out, doing our 180 knot turn, he was kind of heading straight, and he went just outside of us. He stayed visually separated from us, but it's traffic the whole time. The thing was amber and indicated like 700-800 feet below us. So I was like, that's crazy.
Wow. So you had traffic advisories going on while you were doing a go around in a mountainous area, thus the high elevation. Where in a country where English is the second language for pretty much most of the controllers, so there's a language barrier issue that you're dealing with as well. Plus, you're doing a go around that. How often do we actually do those out on the flight line? I mean,
right, yeah. So that was the thing. We practice them all the time in the simulator, and once you leave ground school or any kind of checking event, for the first maybe week or two, those call outs are fresh in your head, and you think you can regurgitate them after that in a heartbeat. But the reality is when you're put under the gun, you almost hesitate. I don't know if you hesitate, but you don't forget what you need to say. You kind of know what you need to do, but the words just don't come out the way they did in training.
Right.
But the good thing is I don't know if you guys get into that habit or practice, but every time I read the briefing card, it talks about go around considerations, and I just go ahead right then and there and just say, hey, let's just go. I'm just going to say it out of my, for my refresher, go around toga flaps 3. Toga set, climb set, pause rate, gear up, set, misapproach, altitude, and then, run through the checklist that way. That way, at least you kind of rehearsed it. But, this was also one of those soft go-arounds where you don't do the full toga thing. We did the, altitude hold, pause thing, made sure the altitude was set, vertical speed up, increase the airspeed, 180 knots. Flaps, we were in flaps 2, I think, at that point. So we just went to flaps 1. And so it was an easy go around, and the FO was actually flying, so I was pilot monitoring at that point. But solid right seat, like pretty much everybody at Legacy. He flew the thing like he'd been flying the thing for 100 years, and it flew just perfectly. A little bit of a the change in pitch for the go around was probably the most drastic thing, but other than that, it was perfect.
Do you remember how far out you were on the localizer when the go around was initiated?
Well, so it wasn't on the localizer, so they only have the VOR. I think it's a VOR approach into the airport. So we were approximately 5 miles on the final.
Okay.
So I mean, we were gear down flaps 2. We were getting ready to land flaps 3.
Yeah.
And then config full. It was VFR, thank God.
Yeah.
That makes things a lot easier. And we saw the airplane taking off, and we were kind of like, why are they launching this guy in front of us? But then they said it's a medevac. So we're like, all right, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of stress that you're trained, you're professional, you're trained, you have a couple decades of experience doing this. It's not the first time it's happened. So, as an experienced captain as you are, you've mentioned a couple things that we're going to just clarify for the listeners out there, for those that maybe are not typed in an Airbus or at an airline right now. So a go around, right? So you're coming in on approach, even though it's a VFR, this is not GA where you can just head for the numbers or head for the base leg turn. And we look at the Walmart building down below. When we hit the Walmart building, we hook a right turn and make sure we use the right rudder. And we're going to come in and land on the aiming point markers and just visually, right? Or we have PAPIs for reference, okay? We still have all that at let's just say a 121 or an IFR flight plan, right? Or a 121 carrier. We still have all that, but we are also required through our company's standard operating procedures or SOPs that we're supposed to back up every single approach with some kind of radio navigation. Now into Mexico, sometimes they don't have ILSs, and thankfully we're not authorized and don't do NDB approaches anymore, because I'm sure
thank God
that'd be kind of spicy. But so normally we're backing it up with either a VOR or a GPS approach or some kind of approach that is built and constructed in the FMS system. So we're just following you can call it the magenta needles or whatever, and we're following all that down to a point where if we, for whatever reason, don't see the runway, we would go around. But we're doing this under visual conditions. Now, you're under visual conditions. So even in the brief, I mean, you do an excellent job. I do the same thing. You just kind of go through the litany of a go around because maybe the person you've flown with has not been flying with captains that do that. And the last time they heard the go around, and that's been, brought to the front of their memory, was maybe 6 months ago when they were in recurrent or something. So, so it's good that you did that. You mentioned config 1 or flaps 1 on the go around, which means you didn't completely clean up the airplane and speed up. Right. So you just said, you know what, why clean up the airplane? We're just going to do a box pattern and come back. Right. So, do the missed approach procedure. So they may have cleared you for a visual. Now they tell you, if they clear for a visual, they're not supposed to give you fly the missed approach procedure. They can't. Right. They have to give you radar vectors or enter a pattern, right pattern, left pattern, something. So that's kind of curious, but in Southern America countries.
So they're non-radar environment down there. So that's one of the big things, one of the first things. And then so they have to clear, they clear you for an instrument approach.
Even under visual conditions.
Yeah. So we were actually flying the whole procedure, but just like you said, we still under visual conditions back it up with some kind of a procedure. Mm-hmm. But even under the visual conditions, the tower is still utilizing some of the normal GA phraseology for, hey, report, beam the tower. And I think that was because since they don't have radar, they could actually look out their window and say, oh yeah, there's a beam the tower, there they are. And so they can time their operations with takeoffs and arrivals with our position.
And sequence you back in the queue, yeah. But you also said soft go around. Now, a lot of our listeners might not know what a soft go, even other airlines might not know what a soft go around is. Like, what's a soft go? Can you explain a little bit, expand on that for me?
Yeah, soft go around is a term that we use in the Airbus world, where we do not utilize the maximum thrust from the engines to execute the go around. So a soft go around is utilizing a reduced thrust setting so that you're not, putting all that stress on the motors. You're not also subjecting your passengers to an extreme acceleration and vertical pitch moment, which would happen during a go around, full go around. So, and basically it's just it's a setting in the thrust management system. So when we execute the go around, we go toga, which is maximum thrust, and that initiates the FMS sequencing of the go around, and then we come back to climb, which is the soft go around, and it's basically you go into SRS speeds, and then you go into climb, and that takes you into the reduced thrust climb thrust of the go around. So, yeah, it's kind of neat.
Yeah, and
I think 737s have the same kind of thing. They can hit like the toga buttons on it. Mm-hmm. They hit it twice, it goes in the full go around. You hit it once, it's a soft go around for them. Yeah, and I'm not familiar with any other airplane, so.
Right. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Definitely always fun to hear about this. Now, you also mentioned some maintenance delays from today.
Yeah, we did. We had some. Unfortunately, we were getting ready to push from DFW on our way to Omaha this morning, and we had an early show. We had like a 6 o'clock show this morning. So 7 o'clock departure. And, approximately 10 minutes prior to departure, when refueling's complete, you got to do your before start flow. So went up, turned on the fuel pumps, turned on the seatbelt sign, came down and went to check the ECAM and went through the acronym Florida Highway Patrolman Eats Donuts kind of thing. And I think I deliberately hit the bleed button because we had I don't remember why I hit the bleed button, but that was not part of the Florida Highway Patrol. But I hit the bleed button for some reason, and we had amber X's on the compressor temperature. I forget the actual technical term, but it's the compressor output temperature. That there were amber X's.
So the sensor,
So I'm like, oh man, and the FO saw it. I'm like, oh shoot, okay, we got to write this up because we see it now. So wrote it up. But the crazy thing was, you figured, we were like literally 5-10 minutes prior to departure. You would think that they would just come in. It's something that is MELable, and they would just MEL it. But the technician did a great job, and I'm really, really thankful for his effort. They actually troubleshot the system to see if they can get it to work. And he was a rock star, man. He had his manual out, and he was going through everything on his little. I think they use iPads now, but on the iPads to troubleshoot and see if we can get the system back in order.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it was unsuccessful. It took him about a half hour to do it. But the funny thing is that we were sitting there doing this, and it's dark, right? It's 6 a.m. in Dallas. I don't remember what time the sun comes up, but it's usually around 7 o'clock, I think. But anyway, so we had the dome light on, had it on bright. So as he's sitting there doing his thing, there was a flash inside the cockpit, like a picture flash, blink.
Yeah.
And all of us looked up, went like, what was that? And I looked at him like, I think the overhead dome light just blew. So we went to dim, and sure enough, the overhead dome light was out.
Is that the one over the captain or the FO?
It was over the FO.
Oh, no.
Right. So that's the one we need, right? Because that's the, isn't that the one that's part of the electrical emergency configuration?
I think it's the captain's one, because
it's the FO side of it.
The FO is the one that works only under battery because he can read the QRH with it.
Oh, that's right. And then the captain's only one with instruments. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So I'm like, I probably shouldn't be saying this on a podcast, broadcasting to all 3 listeners that we have out there, but we had the cockpit voice recorder was on, and we audibly said, "Oh, the light just went out." And, I had a maintenance guy here. I don't know what his level of, I don't want him to say, oh, they knew about it and they went without it. Yeah. And then the cockpit door was open. Yeah. And I'm sure some of our conversation carried out into the galley in first class.
They can hear you in the first 3 rows for sure.
Yeah. I'm like, you know what? Let's write it up.
Yeah.
And so that opened up a second can of worms, because when the technician came to replace the light bulbs, the actual lens of the dome light was completely broken. Like somebody had stood up, hit their head on it, shoved it through its, its little compartment up there.
Captains have hard heads, so yeah, I can see how that could crack.
So they had to go out and find a whole new lens and totally re-put the whole thing back together.
Wow.
So that turned into like an hour and a half delay.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh man.
That's a nice PA. I'm sure you look forward to telling that PA, like, ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to believe this.
Yeah, you figured it'd be like, all right, give him another 20 minutes, right? Light bulbs, e-logbook right now. So I was like, man, how do I make this PA? How do you transition in from, the first mechanical situation into the second one? And I just told the truth. I was like, hey, the first maintenance problem has been addressed, but unfortunately, during the process, a secondary issue had developed, and this one might take just as long.
Wow!
And so we're going to have to address this, and I do apologize. We're going to get you there as quickly and, but more importantly, as safely as possible. So
yeah,
hey, what can you do, man? You just gotta.
That's it.
Yeah, just got to do your job, and things break. You got to write it up.
sometimes it's even interesting when that happens because the guy that's fixing one thing isn't qualified to fix the other thing. So you got to wait for maintenance all over again. You know, he's here and he's like, okay, I'm only the avionics guy. So he's out and they're waiting for the next guy to come in. And
Brian, that's exactly what happened. The guy that came out was a avionics guy.
There you go.
And he couldn't change a light bulb because that's not his scope of work,
I
think
funny,
he's capable, but so anyway.
That's it. Thank you, Rob, for sharing all that with us. We always enjoy listening to your stories about your experiences out there on the line, and that's what this podcast is really all about, is talking about what today's aviator can expect out there on the flight line. But there's another fantastic aviator here joining us today, and let's get right to him. He is an outstanding aviator and Squawk Ident podcast co-host. He is a former U.S. Navy Reserves Chief Information System Technician, a certified flight instructor, and an Embraer 175 pilot and pilot recruiter for Sandpiper Regional, the alias to one of Legacy Airlines' wholly owned regional airlines, where he is also recovering from a long day of pilot interviews. Oh, God. From his home podcast studio from somewhere in Justin, Texas, please help me in welcoming to the show our very own Mr. Alex D. Alex, how you doing?
I'm here. I'm alive. Still waiting on HR to cut me that paycheck for doing these shows. So if you could have your people just reach out to my people. And,
I'm between contract HRs right now, so we'll get back to you on that.
He's between people.
Yeah, that's I figured as much.
Talk to your union rep.
You saw the movie Office Space, right?
Rob doesn't do anything for me. I've tried reaching out to Rob several times.
The glitch.
Yeah, well, clearly I'm still here.
You see my swing line stapler?
Have we tried picketing?
It's red. It's oh my God, it's red!
Oh my God, dude, you're kidding me. You can't see it on the podcast listeners there, but Alex just broke out a red swing line stapler.
Yep.
He is Milton in the sky.
I'm gonna have to have you move your desk to the closet in the hallway.
I was told I could listen to my radio from a reasonable volume from the hours of 10 to 11, and if Sherry gets to listen to her music, I was told I could listen to my music. I'll burn this place down.
Yes. The mojitos. So
Nice
is
job,
that
man.
really what it's like in HR, Alex? Is that what you're doing? You're just channeling characters from film to do your interviews to see how your candidates would react, or what's going on? Are you getting qualified candidates? Are people showing up in Hawaiian shirts and flip flops still?
I'm not. I can't say anything.
Can neither confirm
but,
nor deny any of this information.
Last week there was a cadet from one of the
Someone,
who showed up in a polo and slacks and thought that the interview was his. Or let me rephrase that. Thought that the job was his.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we talked about this on the last show and in a couple shows before that. And we've, extensively talked about interview prep for an airline, whether that's regional or charter or, mainline even. Nothing in life is guaranteed. I know Alex has a lot of frustration, and he and I talk quite a bit about this in our personal text about, can you believe this? And thank you for sharing that what you can. Thank you for sharing what you can about this person came in today and can you believe this? What's going on over there at that Cadet Academy program for Legacy Airlines? Well, things are changing, and we were saying in the last interview, the job is not guaranteed. The opportunity to interview is something that you earn by going through the program, but the job is not yours. And things are changing. And now the program is changing to more of the job, maybe yours now, guaranteed, as long as you pass the program. But the program's going to be more difficult. So let's see what happens in the future as the information comes through us. We'll do our best to find some maybe Cadet Academy mentors other than myself, or maybe even some program directors on the future show. That would be great. Because, hey, if you can get a leg up by listening to this podcast, by all means, we're gonna help you out. Now,
Please do.
Now, Alex,
please do.
Are you ready to go back to the line?
Yep. Did I just say that out loud? Sorry. No, yes and no. Like I'm enjoying the time at home. Definitely. Like I'm home Monday through Thursday, off on the weekends, fly on the weekends when I want. But man, sometimes I just miss the ease of just showing up, going to my airplane, kind of getting off my airplane and not having to think about work for another 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of like what I do. But
yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
But more of the same for you. And I do appreciate you sharing what you can with us. And with my cadets, I've talked about this recently as well on the show, that I am a Legacy Airlines cadet mentor now. And have still, the majority of my cadets in my pod are still hanging in there. A couple of them have had some difficulties with oral stage checks. It's hard to pass an oral when you're getting grilled with the, thousands of pages of information that you're required to know for each, whether that be a private instrument oral stage check, or if that's your commercial multi-engine stage. It doesn't matter. There's so much to know, and everything's fair game. If it's in what we used to call the practical test standard, now we call it, what is it, Alex?
ACS,
the
Airman Certification Standards.
Yeah. So anything is fair game in there. And I think the disconnect that I am coming to the realization of here over the past few months with at least my cadets is that there's a different way of studying. And I know Rob and I, when we started out, there were online forums that were like they are today. There was no electronic devices to have smartphones. We were doing everything via the books, and anything online was, hey, did you download this PDF? It's a great tool. It's a great lesson plan. That was about it when we first started out. So there was a lot different way of learning. We were making note cards. We were bouncing tennis balls on the wall while we're reading through our flows and our checklists so that we can...
Looking at the paper trainer.
Sitting there, imagining flipping switches, imagining all this stuff. And we'd sit there and we'd do group study. So if you were weak in something, maybe 2 or 3 of the other pilots in this group study were strong, and then so everybody would hover around them and get that, and then maybe you were strong in something else. So there was a lot of that. And I think today the issue with these cadets is that everybody studies electronically online with their tablet. They're going through slideshow presentations, multiple guest question tests, and they're not really studying in groups as much. As a matter of fact, some of the cadets that have not made it through that are in my pod that I've been mentoring and continue to mentor, even though they're not in the program anymore, they both were the kind of studier that just didn't want to study in a group, or thought that it was too distracting, or they couldn't keep up, or maybe the group was going too slow for them. And so it's different the way we study today. I think Rob,
I noticed too, Tony. I don't mean to interrupt, but I just had recurrent last month. That's something I failed to bring up with all the things that I've been going on and busy life. But one thing I noticed that is very common nowadays is, there's so many guides or, things that to help you study. Nobody actually opens the book where the source of the information is, and, retrieves the information from the source. And I've noticed that, some of the guides just don't, either they're a little bit outdated, or they don't quite, they don't tell the whole story. So they kind of, they get you going in the right direction, but they don't tell you everything. I've noticed that some of the things, just as simple as the performance brief that the first officer is supposed to present the captain with once all the numbers are received, some of those briefings don't include the specific things that, we're supposed to hear.
Right.
And it's, is it a big deal? Probably not. But, there's things that, if you're missing out on some of those little details on that, then what are the other big things that you're missing out on? Right. So
the other thing that, and thank you for that. The other thing that I I just want to mention before we move on and introduce our featured guest today is because we started on paper Jepsons, paper flight manual, paper aircraft operating manual. Every time there was a change,
paper charts,
paper everything. So we would have to, like the first and third Friday of every month, we'd sit there and in the middle of a flight, you're supposed to do it before your flight, but in the middle of the flight, you're sitting there and you're updating charts and you're updating the SOPs and you're like looking at the changes and you're sticking it in there and you knew where to find it. You're like, oh yeah, that just changed. I just put it in the book. Yeah, it's right here. Some people used to use highlighters and Post-its and colored tabs and things and like engine failure, color tab, boom, there it is. And so and every once in a while they'd whip that out in the middle of a flight and they'd go, oh, okay, I just reviewed that. I'm good for another 6 months. Now with all this, we had 3 major books before, JEPS, red book and a blue book. Now we have one tiny little skinny tablet that contains.
Don't forget the gray book too, right?
Oh, and the gray book for the extra studying the systems.
Yeah. The ASM. Yeah.
So the all this studying that we used to kind of do and tactile learning, even though it's reading it on paper, but you're actually touching it, you're marking it up, you're putting your notes in the margin, whatever you're doing, that's all gone. And now you have hundreds of manuals, tens of thousands of pages of information all at your fingertips, but you can never find anything. And that's what every single pilot I've had this conversation with, that's their major frustration. And the company knows this, and part of Recurrent is they always have a class that lasts about 45 minutes and they just teach you how to find stuff in your EFB. And they go, okay, everybody, let's see who finds it first. Let's look up blah blah blah. How many law enforcement officers does it take to take a detainee? We've had a lot of those lately, deportees and detainees and all this stuff. And where are they? And what are the rules? How do you find that? Where do they have to sit?
Can they get a drink?
Can they be offered any water? I mean, all this. So you're like, hell if I know. So let's look it up. And then you look at your tablet and you're like, well, I know I have to go on this app, but and then
search.
Some people are still trying to power on their tablet. Meanwhile, the class has moved on.
Yeah, I can't log in.
I can't. I need to update. I haven't updated in 6 months. I'm like, oh crap. So yeah, it's definitely against us. Technology is kind of against us in that. And the learning is the same. Rob, you hit the nail on the head. They're not going to the source. They're getting it from a gouge, or they're getting it from an online source or an app. But then when they need to look something that's not in there, where do they find it? They don't know how to find it. And the whole point is just know how to find it. That's like the main thing. Yeah.
But then you actually kind of alluded to something that was brought up during training was, and something I never really thought about, although it is ever present, is that, we have at Legacy Airlines, and I'm sure it's the same going across all the majors, was it 3 or 4 different, what's it called? Oh man, I'm sorry. I just lost the term, but different, lives, got Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z, there's a whole, I think we have 3
generations of pilots, right?
So you have guys like us, it's crazy because I hate to think myself this way, but we're kind of back, still in that little paper form. We like the paper format.
Gen Xers, baby.
You and I think we embrace the electronic stuff too. But then you got guys that are older than us that are retiring now, and those guys are like, they look at an iPad or an iPhone and they're just like, Jesus, how the hell do you even use this thing?
Yeah.
And they're still printing out releases and NSs and giving happy chats to the flight attendants and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so those guys are there, but then you got the guys that are coming in that are super savvy with all this electronic stuff. And then
they show up to the cockpit with this, with their tablet, with a pen, and they're like, all right, I'm ready. Let's go.
That's it.
Let's go. And a headset, yeah.
And a
headset.
If that.
They're ready to go. Yep. And it's crazy. It's great, but that's the direction we're going.
Yeah. And get it from the source. We've talked about this before with the Facebook pages, all these forums, hey, are you an LA first officer page, or you're a LaGuardia, captain page, or you're a whatever page. And I see this every day, and I'm reading, and it's like they're asking questions. Like people are asking questions. Hey, what does anyone know? Da, da, da. What are you doing on social media? Get your tablet.
Yeah.
It's so easy. You'll probably, before you even finish typing the question on fucking Facebook, you probably could have already looked it up on your tablet. That's probably 2 inches from you, so it's just so frustrating. If I could
you're
give
probably using to type this message.
Exactly. Yeah, you're using the tablet to type this on Facebook while you're on the airplane Wi-Fi at 37,000 feet, flying to JFK. Whatever. No, that never happens. But anyway, I digress. Let's move on and introduce our featured guest today. I had recently the privilege of flying with this individual. I was on long haul, and I got called out to do a trip, and so I looked at the NS, and the FO's name had a P next to it. Rob, you know what the P next to the FO's name is?
Well, I don't want to bring that up on the podcast right now. Probationary pilot.
Probationary pilot. So
pilot.
Yeah. So I went, oh, great. I got a probationary pilot. No, I'm just kidding, folks. So I thought, this is cool, so I can have a little bit of fun with this new hire. So no, but seriously, I met Brian, and he's just a great character, a lot of fun, and I could hear a little bit of an accent. And I thought, this guy is north of the border. He's from north of the border. I could tell. And we hit it off right away. So without further ado, let's introduce him, shall we? As we mentioned in the opener, our next guest started an aviation career north of the U.S. border by gaining admission to an aviation program at Seneca College in 2010. He graduated at the top 7% of his class, which earned him the acceptance into the Jazz Cadet program. That led him to his current position as an Airbus pilot at Legacy Airlines. We look forward to hearing all about your journey, sir. From his studio in Huntington Beach, California, please help us in welcoming to the show Mr. Brian Nowogorski. Brian, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks, Tony, Rob, and Alex. Thanks for having me on. It was great flying with you the other day. Had a great time going to JFK and back, and told me all about your podcast, how you're out here trying to help, the newcomers into the aviation industry, and just to gain some insight. I know that I fly with a lot of people that have a lot of background in their generations of aviation. And then there's a lot of guys like me and yourself who were, first generation pilots, didn't know much about it. Guys like me, I like hitting switches and all the red and green lights. I don't know. Something drew me to it. And I really didn't know a lot. I think when I first started getting into aviation, I would think, oh yeah, I'm going to do single days, 9 to 5. I'll be home every night. You don't know. You don't know what you don't know. So I'm super happy to be here and be able to talk a little bit about my journey.
Yeah, and thank you so much. And by the way, we don't hit switches. We either press them or manipulate them, but we don't hit. That's
select or deselect.
There you go. Thank you.
It must be a Boeing thing. Yeah. You've seen the guys that
You gotta hit it, hit it harder. No, thank you so much, Brian. So yeah, we got into the cockpit the other morning, and you show up, and you're like, "Hey, I'm Brian. Hi, I'm Tony. What's up? How you doing?" And first question I asked you, I think, was, "Hey, when did they call you out for this trip? Or is this your trip?" And so I was like, "Oh, they called me last night, whatever." And then, before you even left to go do the walk around, you're putting your bags down, and I immediately heard that accent. And I recognized it, and then you said, "Oh yeah." And I'm like, "What'd you do before this?" Like, "Oh yeah, I was at Jazz." I'm like, "Oh, a Canuck."
A Canuck.
Canuck. How you doing out there? Where's your? If you're the Royal Canadian Police, where's your horse?
Yeah, I left my Zamboni at my other house. Yeah.
So no, it was good. We had a good time. We really hit it off, and the trip, if I remember correctly, it really was relatively uneventful.
you know what? The most eventful thing is you got nice first class meals. That's great.
Yeah, we got the T model, the 321T. So at Legacy Airlines, they have multiple models of the Airbus, right? And so you could be, God, I think it's up to a dozen or more now. I think now we're getting some planes from another carrier. Let's just call them
Alaska, I think.
I was going to say Great Northern Airlines, but
oh, sorry,
Alaska, fine. I don't care,
bad.
whatever. I think we're getting some airplanes from Great Northern Airlines. And we already have some from some of the other airlines that are selling their airplanes to Legacy, and so now we've got this whole.
Wait. Time out. Great Northern Airlines.
Yeah,
I heard that they're doing so well that they're just blowing the doors off competition.
Well said.
Alex has been sitting there in the wings waiting for this opportunity. Waiting for this opportunity. Yeah, I heard. And we really loved your open door policy joke on the last one, too. So keep them coming. I expect one now on every single episode. Yeah, let's make it
I set the bar way too low for this show. Oh, God.
I was going to say, wasn't Boeing doing that, too? They have that open door policy. I don't know.
Well, yeah.
They say when one door closes, another one opens. So
that's it. That's what it is. Hey, he fits right in, right on, bro.
Oh, son of a! Well, you know those stickers on all those kit bags that say, "If it ain't Boeing, I'm not going." Now it says, "If it's Boeing, I'm definitely not going."
Yeah, cut it in half and switch it around.
Yeah, exactly.
Just some speed tape on it; it'll be fine.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, we got to get
Speed Tape Airlines.
Yeah, that's right. We'll have to reach out to them and see how they do it. But no, but in all seriousness, we had a great time out there, and we're on the T model. The T model is a transcon model, and I dropped a little history. I don't know how accurate I am. So, of course, as the disclaimer at the beginning of the podcast states, that the views, comments, stories, and opinions shared within this podcast are our own, or those of our guests in no way represent the views of the companies that I or we all may work for, and the stories may or may not have happened in manner which we're told. And so the reason I have the disclaimer is because I don't know how accurate I am. I'm a podcast host that does this for fun. Come on. So, but I was telling Brian the story of how the T model came into existence, because so what happened was the Legacy Airlines had a contract with the Screen Actors Guild of America, and they needed a narrow body aircraft to go from New York to Los Angeles and back and forth multiple times a day. But the agreement was that Legacy would be their first choice, or their sponsor, or their go-to airline, as long as they have lay down flat seats, which didn't exist on narrow body aircraft. You had to fly a wide body aircraft for that. So Legacy said, okay, we'll put aside some airplanes for that route. And United, I believe, was the first to do it. And so we were trying to kind of get some business from them. And that's how the T model happened. So if you're ever on an airplane and you walk onto an Airbus and you're doing a transcon, then you see that they're laid down flat first class seats. And then there's what we call business class seats, which what most people think is first class. And then there's economy plus in the back. I think the maximum it holds is what, 97?
102.
102 in that configuration.
102.
See? Expert over here. So 102 max.
That's why they hired me.
And normally we only hold 196, I think, in the
196. Yeah.
Yeah. The what's that configuration called?
Where the enhanced.
It's
the Oasis.
Oasis. Thank you. That has the cheap seats with no padding, and your butt will hurt after 5 minutes. That's it. No. So yeah, depending on the configuration, it could be the exact same airplane on the outside, but on the inside, it could be different models. So the T model, I really enjoy flying because one, the meals are better. Okay, because they're a little bit higher, hoity-toity, and Brian and I both took full advantage of this. Okay. Our number one flight attendant, both going and coming, was like, "Do you guys want an espresso?" And I was like, You don't have to ask me twice. Can I make it can I have a double, please?" And they're like, "Sure, but I don't have the little straw to foam the milk." I'm like, "Don't worry about it. I take it black.
Forget about it.
I take it black. Come on, honey. Just keep them coming once an hour." So he and I start talking faster and faster throughout the
we got
flight.
a lot of
Oh man, you should have heard those checklists. They were so fast. And
and accurate.
Inaccurate. So no, we had
and
a good
only
time.
you two understood what you were saying to each other because your brains are working at that speed, right?
You know,
Nobody
it's funny
else
you
was
say
like,
that because our flight attendant going to JFK, we landed, I think it was at 10:30 at night or something like that, pretty late. And then our flight attendant, she's like, "Are you guys still talking?"
So that we're pilots, of course we're still talking.
Hey, what's the matter with you? So Brian, let's get into your journey in aviation. You know, we all kind of start somewhere. You know, I kind of started when I was very young, and I just was drawing airplanes and making models and stuff. And I know Rob started kind of in a similar stance, but he got into the military and went through as a chief and got started that way. Alex comes from a long line of aviation experts and pilots. How did you get your start? When did it all begin?
Yeah, I hadn't really had much of anybody that I knew that was a pilot. Really, it was something that I grew up like some kids playing Flight Simulator on the computer. I still remember Flight Simulator 98. Those were the days. I would hang out in the basement. I would do a flight from like Toronto to Argentina, and I'd put the autopilot on after takeoff, and then let the thing run for hours. Just whatever, and I'd go about my day. Then eventually, when I was 16, my dad had a friend who used to work for the police department doing the traffic control. Like they'll fly the highway, and they've got the dashed lines every 100 meters or so, and they'll use those to track people's speeds. He said he'd take us up, so he took me up. He could see that I knew a little bit about aviation, and we went up twice with him. By the time I got into school and I got my pilot's license, I ended up surprising my dad on my very first flight, taking my dad flying. I invited this other pilot with me to be, in there with us. So it was a good time. I kind of got to take him flying with me, and it all kind of came full circle. But yeah, I mean, it was. I was very fortunate. Seneca College has a really incredible program, and they were 15 minutes away from my house.
Yeah.
So just kind of got lucky that way. I applied, got accepted, and I really enjoyed the program. It was quite intense, I'd say. It's a 4-year program, no summer vacation, so you just like go pretty much 4 years straight, which weeds some people out as you could imagine. But if you're determined to do this as a career, we graduated what I would say is some really high skilled pilots who are now working just all over Canada, and I've got friends that are one from there now, and they're in the US, some at Delta. I got friends that are in Canada, WestJet, Air Transat, just all over the place. A really, really high quality pilots. So
yeah. So were you in high school when you start getting that itch and thinking maybe I'll apply to an aviation college, or was it something that kind of just developed organically?
You know what? I had applied to Seneca College and got accepted, while at the same time got an acceptance at a university program for aerospace engineering. I thought, hey, I mean, I'm obviously should go to university, right? And that's one of the differences in Canada. Is university, and college is like community college, right? Seneca College is like a community college that offers a bachelor's of aviation. So I thought, I got to go to university for whatever the reason, right? And so I went, did a year of aerospace engineering, and it just wasn't, I kept thinking to myself, I'm going to spend my career, designing a panel, 1 foot by 1 foot, and that's going to be my whole career, and they might not even use it. So yeah. I thought, what, let me reapply at Seneca, and I did, and they offered me the, for the following year. And so I ended up going there, and nice. Yeah, the rest is right there.
So it's a 4-year degree then?
Yeah, it's a 4-year degree at a, I'd say it's kind of like a community college. It hosts a lot of different trades and such, but it has what I might consider the highest aviation college in the country, kind of resembling something similar to Embry-Riddle. I'd say I've heard is somewhat comparable.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a college and a program specifically designed to get you a job in a higher level airline or air transport career, with the inevitable goal to earn yourself an ATP somewhere.
Yeah, in fact, the way that it works with the program that has a certification through Transport Canada, which is the equivalent to the FAA up there in Canada. Mm-hmm. And they do basically, as I finish the program, I have what they call the frozen ATP. And all I have to do is get basically finish your, some sort of cross countries. And I believe it's get 1,500 hours. And as soon as you do that, you now have an ATP license and can upgrade as a captain at the airline.
Okay, so does Canada obviously works under completely different set of rules. They don't have like FAR 117, things like that. They don't have FARs. They have their Canadian equivalents.
Right,
so
right.
To get a job at an airline in Canada, to this point, you don't have to be a air transport pilot licensed pilot, right? You can get a commercial rating and get hired on, like it used to be here in the U.S.
Correct. Yeah. So after Colgan air crash in the US, the 1,500-hour rule was implemented. Canada doesn't have that. There are some insurance requirements, but Seneca partnered with Jazz to do a cadet program and try out and see how a 250-hour pilot, which is what I was, how they would do flowing straight into the airline. So it started off, I believe my class had 7 guys. The following year, about 10 to 12, and then it started to grow where they were like, okay, like we need pilots, and so if the pilots are qualified as they graduate, we're going to give them an opportunity. And so the program is quite successful in doing so.
Okay. Yeah. Now you mentioned you started out in the program with like about 100 fellow pilots, and by the time you graduated, there were you were like only 7 that made it through that program. And that's a pretty steep curve there. What do you think were the major hurdles with the program?
So the 100 started for year 1. About 37, I think, graduated, give or take. Mm-hmm. A few pilots were, if they might drop a year, if they needed to get better grades. And so we graduated about 37 guys, and 7 of those got the offer of employment at Jazz. The rest of them, graduated, and I know many pilots who are either at Jazz now, they're at Air Canada or some of the other airlines. They've done well for themselves as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So this fantastic opportunity opened up for you. You were part of the first, cadre of pilots to be accepted into this program, and you went over to fly. Going from, what were you flying over there? There's a lot of Pipers and Cessnas and things, or?
Yeah, we started on Cessna 172s and then moved a short period on a beach craft Bonanza, which is a fabulous airplane, but they were phasing that out. So only got a couple hours flying that. And then we did but 20 hours or so on a beach craft Baron. They had just got a really nice G1000 Baron. I mean, just at the time, you couldn't want or pick anything better. It was fast. It was, slick and cool. And you could smell the leather. It was brand new.
So new, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so you got into the program, and you come out of there. How did that transition go for you? Here you were a 250-hour commercial pilot, and then you're setting foot into a turboprop in the Dash 8. I mean, was that a pretty tough training for you to be your first real gig outside of school? You didn't even have to flight instruct. You just went straight to it. You know what? I'll give credit where credit is due. The instructors and the program at Seneca are unbelievable. They really do prepare you for that type of environment. And not only that, is because Seneca and Jazz had sort of partnered up to get those, high quality pilots. They, I would say, Jazz provided all SOPs in the form for training at Seneca, and they even had some pilots who were previous Seneca alumni who are now working at Jazz that would come in and teach and instruct. And they had a CRJ simulator. So you would do basically the equivalent of an entire PPC program, 10 sims in a CRJ 200 simulator to the Jazz SOP standard. You wouldn't actually receive a PPC, but you could technically have just passed the PPC. I see.
And with that program, as I joined Jazz, as a pilot for them, it was a pretty good transition. I already knew their flight plans. I already knew their SOPs. you have to learn a new airplane because I didn't get the CRJ. It wasn't available when I started. So I flew the Dash 8, but it was a great airplane. I mean, eventually I flew the CRJ, and I was kind of like going back to school because I'd, done all that flying in the simulator prior.
Yeah. Now, you were based out of Toronto?
I was mainly based out of Toronto, and then briefly Vancouver, and then back to Toronto. I did about 8.5 years with Jazz.
Okay. And so what airplane types did you accomplish there? You said the CRJ and the Dash 8, or are those the two only that you got there?
Yeah, I flew the Dash 8 100 and 300 for 2 years in the right seat, 2 years in the left seat, about a year on the Q400 in the left seat, and then 3 years on the CRJ in the left seat, including being a line check airman for about 8 months.
Okay. And then, so a lot of the listeners are probably listening to this going, well, wait a minute. I thought you said you work for Legacy Airlines. How does a Canadian rated pilot with Canadian licenses and citizenship and job end up at a U.S. flag carrier? How did that transition happen for you, and why?
Yeah, so I married my wife, an American, and eventually received a green card. I believe there aren't, not that I'm fully aware, or I could say, but you do require a green card in order to work for a U.S. legacy airline. As far as I'm aware of, there are no other loopholes. So you got to go get yourself a wife or something. But once I got my green card, it was a fairly quick process. Say painless, although it's a little costly, not crazy. You do have to basically file through the IACRA system and request that Transport Canada send the FAA your records. And so they'll receive those records, and then you'll have to do an ACP CTP course, which is basically the 1,500-hour course that you would do as a 1,500-hour pilot in the US. With that, certificate in hand, you can then go write. It's an ACP conversion exam. I believe it's a little shorter than the one that everyone else takes. I think it's 60 questions. And when you do that, you finalize that, you bring all your results over to your FAA officer. Yeah, FSDO officer, yeah. And they fumble around with some paperwork, make some mistakes, redo it, send it in. 6 weeks later, you have a certificate in the mail kind of thing. So
wait. You're saying the FAA makes mistakes?
Nah, I didn't say that.
Okay. I was just making sure because I
pull the tapes.
They were infallible, in my opinion.
And all queries can be sent to faa.gov for
yeah.
No, so it wasn't that hard of a process. I've heard some pretty bad stories over the last couple decades about getting conversions over, and I think every country is a little bit different. So if you're coming in from, say, Europe, or you're coming in from another country that has a different set of rules and standards and licenses, it could take longer. It could be a more involved process. But I guess coming from North America, the process between Canada and the US seems relatively standard.
Yeah, but you know what? And I hope I can help someone listening to this because when I went through it, the information that both sides of the border provide is not full, and it doesn't explain. And you call the FSDO and they don't know, and no one really quite knows. And in fact, I found a blog online of a pilot who I believe ended up at a regional. I don't know them personally. I found their information, and they kind of laid it out pretty good step by step. And sure enough, as I went through their advice, and it was fairly painless. But unfortunately, the directives that the FAA and the Transport Canada put out are quite difficult to really quite follow. So hopefully, somebody listening,
Yeah. So you went through the program, and you were able, you met a girl. And, and thankfully she was a U.S. native that that must have been pretty costly. I mean, how much did you have to pay for her?
I know.
Actually, the actual story is actually quite heartwarming. Are you willing to share that?
100%. Yeah,
so he tells me. So I'm like, oh, so wait a minute, hold on. You got your green card. What did you do? Did you come to the U.S. and like you met a girl, or is she in aviation? No. I'm like, well, then how the heck did you meet this girl? You're in flying. Did she coach? You didn't meet on a layover? How did you meet? And oh my God. So I'll let you tell it.
Yeah. I'll give you the cliff notes. My wife worked for Delta at the time. She was a part-time ramp employee in Honolulu. And she was working full time as a nanny for a young mom who's, they were quite friendly at the point. They were originally from Toronto. So when they were going back to Toronto to visit, their family, she tagged along with their flight benefits, decided to go down. And she was really looking to go see a baseball game and didn't have anybody to go with. The Angels were playing the Blue Jays. And, this mom egged her on to get a Bumble profile going and we'll find you a date. You never have to see them again, she says, so. As they say, the rest is history. We went on a couple of dates, and then I flew over to Hawaii the week after that when she was there, and just back and forth until we got married 9 months later. Now we have 2 kids.
So there you have it,
wow.
folks. Get your Bumble profile updated.
Yeah, people keep telling me that I need to contact Bumble, that they'll send me free stuff. We'll see.
Yeah, who knows? You could be on a commercial or something, because this is, match made on Bumble. So, yeah. so you met your wife and beautiful wife, beautiful kids. We were sharing photos of families and whatnot. And so through just happenstance, you were able to change your trajectory in your journey in aviation. Yeah. And that's how you met the girl. And that's how you started to look at, hey, maybe working for a U.S. airline is a good idea. So you jump in feet first, pretty quick, as you said. And how the heck did you go from flying for Jazz Aviation to getting a job at Legacy?
Listen, I never thought I'd have this opportunity because, all the pilots out in Canada, they all hate me, because they want it. This is the place to be. And I know when you're in the thick of it, in the middle of it, and going through the grind, sometimes you can forget how good you have it. We've all been there. We all fly with guys who just quite forget what they have until, and so like me being here and really getting to see and at Legacy, I mean, it's the best job in the world. For anybody out there listening that's thinking about it, we talked about this, right, Tony? Is you'll never find this kind of money to just hang out. I mean, of course, it comes with its workload, and you gotta be professional, and you gotta get here. But once you're here, you get to the gate and you put the parking brake on and you go home, and that's it. You don't have to pick up the phone. You don't have to answer emails or worry about clients or anything like that. You've just got, all this money to just love what you do for a living. It really, this really is the best job in the world.
Yeah. And I remember we were talking about this on our flight back and I interrupted you and I said, you know what? You're right. However, there will come a time, hopefully it doesn't happen in your career and you get lucky, but there will always come a time in an aviator's career. And, the flight attendants, the wives, the husbands, the boyfriends and girlfriends, the family members, they all think that we're just, so fortunate. We must be really smart to do this job, because why else would we get paid so much to fly for a Legacy carrier, to sit there and read the paper and push the autopilot and land buttons? And I mean, we don't even land the airplane, right? The airplane does it, right? So
there's a newspaper too up there. I didn't know that.
Yeah, you remember those things? They had, you got ink on your
USA
hands.
Today.
USA Today is good for
crossword
toilet paper.
Puzzle.
Yeah, Sudoku. And so
they say that's what Sully was looking for when he did his last sweep of the plane, was the copy of the USA Today.
He probably was. He goes, I almost finished that crossword puzzle first time in 10 years.
We're going to be here a while.
The evidence would
take a minute, so might as well get the New York Times and the LA Times and get the crosswords.
But thank you, Alex, for mentioning Sully, because that's my point, is that there will be maybe one flight, maybe just one, in your entire career where your actions, your quick thinking, your following procedures, your quick and accurate and appropriate response might save the lives of everybody on board the aircraft and everybody on the ground that's in harm's way. And you'll earn your entire career salary in one flight. But odds are no one will ever know about it because you'll fix it, you'll make it, and the passengers will never know. The ATC will never know. Everything turned out fine. And some people go, well, you're trained. That's what you're supposed to do. That's why you get paid the big bucks. See, I'm like, yeah, but you've earned that. You just saved the lives of everybody on board because of you and maybe the other pilot's actions. You guys just earned your entire career's pay in one flight. So we're getting paid because we need to be ready. Yeah. We need to be prepared. We need to be educated. We constantly are in the books. If you don't like studying, do not become a pilot, period. If you don't like continuously learning how to do something over again, a little bit different each time, do not become a pilot. Because that's what you're going to do for the rest of your career. And if you're lucky, you'll never have to use your superior skills. You'll just have to show up and fill out the paperwork, sign your name in the book, and fill out your crossword puzzle. but
show up, fly, go home. Show up, fly, go home.
But let's not scare those potential pilots away too by saying you have to study, and I'm not saying you don't have to study. But a lot of times the studying comes in the form of curiosity. Hey, I know there's something in the book that talks about this. Let me see if I can find it. So now you just start going down a wormhole.
You're playing a game. You see what you can find. I was a big advocate, especially when learning. I've transitioned a few different airplanes, now a few different airlines, and it's you grab your FOM or your AOM or whatever you got, and you read it cover to cover. You don't have to digest everything, but you read it, making sure you understand what the table of contents is, and that way, when something comes up, you don't have to know everything, but you have to know that something about that topic exists and where you can find it in a somewhat of a quick manner, right?
I was gonna say I know we use a lot of the same systems, and like they have quick links in the beginning of ours on specific things just for that. Like you don't need to know exactly where it is. You just need to know that it exists and find that hyperlink because 9 times out of 10, the important stuff is hyperlinked.
Yeah, and just like you said, be curious and be professional. Like I said, hey, I'm boarding, but I don't have how many flight attendants do I have? I don't remember what the deal is, but I know that information is somewhere. It's going to be in the AOM, and I'm going to quickly search. It's probably going to be in the pre-flight section. You just kind of your brain, and if it's not, it's not, and learn how to use the search function to quickly find the things that you're looking for. That I found that to be, one of the good things, especially as a captain. If you're a new captain, is one of those things where like you just want to know what information is there to be known. Even if you don't know the information itself.
Yes, thank you. For that, and thank you, gentlemen. So to talk about your transition to Legacy, you applied.
Yeah,
and they called you.
It was an interesting way I got here. Yeah, I went through the testing, the puzzle testing that they do, and not having any knowledge of U.S. hiring at all because I didn't have many friends in the U.S. industry. I wasn't really prepared for it. Really, in hindsight, I mean, I wish somebody had told me, hey, there's going to be all these puzzles, go look them up online, figure out what they're all about. And so, I kind of just struggled through them as I went. And I was fortunate enough to get a call and allowed me to showcase really myself through the interview process itself. But anybody listening who's looking to get hired, definitely take a look at these the testing that they do, the cognitive testing. And
you're going to have to explain this to me because I came through with the flow through, as did Rob, as Alex, I'm sure will.
Okay.
What puzzles are you talking about? The first time I heard this was very recently. I had no idea they give you a cognitive test.
Yeah, it's called the AON assessment, I believe. And I know Legacy does it, and I believe Delta does it. There might be some others potentially. It's a series of brain teasers, if you will, spinning shapes, figuring out which they're angled on which way. This Sudoku style puzzle with shapes. There's some few different speed games, or like quick reaction games, figuring out how many balls are being juggled, or just things to see. I mean, it's going to pick up on how sharp you are. There's not a specific way to prepare. There are some online resources that are available, but generally, I mean, most pilots are going to pass. If you've made it to that stage, that's not going to hold you up. But I would have just, really wanted to know that what I was getting myself into before I, just booted up my laptop and I just started wiggling away with my mouse. I would have, loved to have known what I was getting myself into. It's not terribly difficult, but just knowing would have been great.
Yeah. So really, what they're looking
forward briefing.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's like the threat forward briefing. Yeah, if I would have known about this, we would have been ready to handle it. But
yeah. And it's the company's way to just ensure that your spatial reasoning, your hand-eye coordination,
that's right.
You're right. You're able to assess what's going on, interpret the information, and come up to a reasonable conclusion. And that's really what they're testing you on. So you went through all that, and you went through your interview process. You got very positive experience out of the whole thing, and
definitely
you got hired. But you didn't start off on the Airbus. What did you get hired onto?
No, I did. I was on the Airbus, but I was.
You were.
I was initially based on the East Coast for about 2 or 3 months before getting my West Coast transfer.
I see.
So just a few more months of commuting. At that point, I had been commuting from LA to Toronto for the last couple of years. So I was excited. This is officially the first month that I am West Coast based. I drove. On our pairing there, I drove to the airport. We did one flight there, one flight back, and I drove home. And I was just so excited, telling my wife I couldn't believe I finally get to just drive to work.
That's a good feeling, isn't it?
Oh my God. It's a
totally different job when you do that.
Oh my God. What a blessing.
Listen, I played golf in the morning, then drove to work, flew to JFK, flew back, got home, and I made it in time for the anthem on the Super Bowl. Like you can't buy that kind of seniority, if you have to commute. You just can't.
Wait a minute. So seniority. Wait a minute. You don't even have 100 hours yet total time.
I'm already bidding 71.5% total bidders on the West Coast.
Wow.
So LA is a junior. What does that mean? So LA is a junior base for Legacy Airlines, which means that when you get hired, odds are you might go to Los Angeles. Well, why is it a junior base? Well, because it's an expensive place to live. And if you don't live in Southern California, why would you want to commute into it? So yeah, a lot of people that get LA end up leaving LA pretty quick. So in terms of first officers, it's a pretty junior base. You can hold a line pretty quick.
Yeah, I'm already bidding. I think it was about 97% of a line holder, so I can officially, hold that line. And I think I'm going to take a gamble and figure out what a line's all about next month. We were talking about that.
Yeah, we were talking because our bidding window is now open and it's going to close tomorrow. So, yeah,
I'm going to gamble it. So we're going to see. I told my wife I think it's the best month to try it. March, not much going on.
Yeah,
and then the summer's going to kick in. I'd rather see what it's all about before.
You're more likely to catch a line in the summertime because the senior pilots take their vacation.
Yeah.
So you have less senior pilots on the line, and you'll move up. And then somewhere around the spring break, you'll get a good line. But then around Christmas time, you might get something okay because a lot of people, the senior pilots, are on vacation. So the relative seniority all goes up. But then, like during these months, usually it's tough because everybody's back on the line flying. So, good luck. Congratulations. Welcome.
Thank you.
To Legacy. Again, you got to do 2 landings on this trip. 2 legs and you did 2 landings? What? was I?
You were very kind. Either you were very kind or you were very scared of your own. I'm not sure. I'm gonna assume you're kind.
Alex, shut up.
Right? They say you could trap more errors as a pilot monitoring.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
I wasn't gonna say anything.
You were just thinking it. So
you had good tips for me, Tony. That was a good landing there back in LA. I was happy with that.
Yeah, no, it was very good. So what happened was I asked him, I said, hey, have you ever flown into JFK? He's like, well, no, actually I haven't. I'm like, all that time with Jazz and you never went from Toronto to JFK?
Yeah.
He's like, no, JFK, I never. So I'm like, okay, you want to fly it? You fly it. So he flew it all the way out there, did a great job, great landing. And we did all the briefings. Hey, well, in JFK, you can expect this and our taxiway, and they're going to tell us to monitor ground, and you don't stop on the bridge, and then we got to call ramp before we do the entry point. They're going to tell you the entry point, and you're going to relay that to ground if they ask. But if they don't ask, just keep moving. It's kind of like Chicago and all that stuff. So we go to the gate, and everything was really smooth. We go to the pretty short layover. It was supposed to be 12 and change, and it ended up being just shy of 12 because of delays and all that. Late inbound flight, but then on the way back, I was flying, and then it was a 5 hour. First on the way to JFK, we got into the 600 club.
Yeah, that was good.
I saw that.
Yeah, so over 600 knots ground speed. We had some pretty good tailwinds. It only took 4 hours. We got there like almost 30. We left LA an hour late, and we landed at JFK 20
minutes late.
Were we late?
Oh,
I thought we were early. I don't know.
Close.
I don't remember. Either way, we weren't that late. So then on the way back, it was a 5 hour and 45-minute flight because of the headwinds and turbulence. We had a lot of turbulence. We were going up and down, different altitudes. So anyway, we get about 2 hours out, and we start thinking about, okay, let's pass back some tray tables. Let's get another espresso going. And it's like, no, we turned down the ice cream, the vanilla ice cream. So we're enjoying ourselves. The Haagen-Dazs. We're enjoying ourselves on this, and then we start briefing, and Brian says, I've never landed at LAX either. And I went, oh, well, in that case, couple it to your side, autopilot 2. You do the brief, you do the approach, and we ended up landing on 2-4 left behind a heavy, a 7-8. So he did a fantastic job. Touched it down, greased it in. As soon as the mains touched down, I went, show off.
Yeah. You're going to tell people you did it anyway, so it's okay.
That's right. Well, all the good captains always take credit for the good landings. That's right. That's the way it goes.
I always like to say, if you get a good landing, you stand, you say goodbye to the passengers, have a great day. Thank you for flying with us. You have a bad landing, you're still doing your briefing inside. You keep the cockpit door closed while everybody gets off the airplane.
Oh no, I tell the FO, go stand there and say goodbye to everybody. So but
that's rule 1 of the cockpit.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Excellent flying with you. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. Just a couple questions, and then we're going to talk about a couple of these articles that we wanted to talk about, that recent events that maybe we can shed some light and spark a quick discussion. But a couple questions for you. So your career path, 14 years in from zero to hero. That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. In your journey, what do you think was the most difficult challenge for you?
I would say it was those 4 years of training. Like I said, I went to a really great college, and they expected you to be available. The first year was 2 semesters, and then the summer, if you were within the top tier of their students, you were selected to start your flying early. There's 2 semesters of academics, and then in the summer, if you were selected to do so, you would go straight into the flying. And I was. So that meant my first summer, that's it. I'm flying through the summer. Then you go into 2 more semesters of school, and then you're going to go do a co-op semester. Then you go 2 more semesters of school, then more flying. And you're flying by the second and third and fourth year of school, you're flying all 3 semesters. So you got 2 semesters of academics and flying, and then a 3rd semester of school of summer flying. So you could maybe take a week vacation if you requested it, if you didn't mind getting held back a little bit, but then you're just gambling away at maybe falling behind someone else and scheduling issues and stuff. And so for about 4 years, that's all you did. You were doing academics and you were flying and you had your head down and being a jazz cadet, there was a requirement to pass all exams with 80% and not have any check ride failures. So you're now in this environment where you really want to succeed and you got to give it everything. So now being able to fly the line, put your feet up on the dashboard, enjoy your espresso, sometimes you feel like, you've earned it a little bit.
Yeah.
So for anybody out there that's, just starting, I just say, just be professional. And like, if you want to do this, like, do it all the way and just give it up everything you got. It's worth it when you get to the end.
So what I'm hearing is the biggest challenge is the beginning of all those new experiences. And, that's why it's so important to lay down a very solid foundation of your education.
100%.
You
pick a good school.
Yeah. Pick a good school, good instructor, and find it from the source. Stay away from the gouges and stay away from the online forums if you can. Those are great, but like I had one cadet who recently said, well, my instructor taught me weather wrong. I'm like, wait a minute, you went into a lesson not knowing the information, relying on what your instructor told you, and then you took that and used it for your knowledge base. I thought you were supposed to go into your lesson fully aware of the lesson, have read it, studied it, and if the instructor says something incorrect, which happens, we're all human, aren't you then getting brownie points if you correct them and go, hey, I think that actually is this way. Let's look in the book. I think I found it on this page right here in the curriculum. Can you let's clear this up together. That's
you would think that's how it works, but it doesn't anymore.
Yeah.
They rely solely on you, and your word is what they trust and take to check rides. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is to go to the source. That's the new way of making sure you get it done.
And Tony, we're talking about picking a good school, and I'll tell you, I had an interview when I was looking for different airlines. I applied and had an interview with JetBlue, and I remember when I was doing the process where they look at your records, the HR, or maybe I might have been a pilot that was doing it. I forget now, and they said, "Oh, you haven't had any failures, right?" Because he's looking at my stuff. And I said, the first thing that came out of my mouth, I said, you know what? I've just been very fortunate to have instructors who just taught me really well and prepared me in such ways that I never had a failure. And he said, wow, I've never had anybody like thank that aspect of how they got to where they are. And I was thinking, yeah, I mean, if I had gone anywhere else and just with a poor environment, poor instructors, I probably wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So that's one of those things is, and it wasn't, sometimes the cheapest option is just not going to cut it, right? Sometimes you got to do your research and really make sure you're going to a good spot to really learn good foundation, like you said.
The dividends that you pay now will definitely pay off throughout your career. Now, Alex, I wanted to ask you too, Brian's raising some pretty good points here. Is ego the number one killer of a good interview?
Not necessarily, but I mean, everybody knows there's a fine line between cocky and confidence. And we as pilots know how to ride that line very well because we have to be fairly confident in what we're doing, right? Because at the end of the day, we have hundreds of lives in the back, at stake. But it's not necessarily an instant killer, but that mindset, you can see it start to come out in the interview, and you can see that, it may not be, really a good fit at the end of the day. I mean, realistically, what I look for in an interview what I do is obviously I ask the technical questions, and technical questions are black and white. There is no, right or gray area on them because there's a right and a wrong answer of what I'm looking for, right? And if you're a pilot, you should know those. The gray area comes in when you do the HR side and you're starting to ask them, tell me a time or something along those lines, right? Without giving away what we ask in interviews. But I really look for, can I see flying a 4-day with this guy and not want to punch him in the face by the end of the trip?
You would think that's a pretty easy thing to accomplish.
Yeah. You'd be surprised because, I mean, there's people that, like, if you have a conversation with them and you start to talk to them, you start to open them up more and you start to see their their personality shine through, and you got to take into account that they're nervous as all hell for an interview.
Yeah.
So, but with there's just the guys and gals that you can see almost instantly that you sit them down and they have this like machismo, like, well, how do you do? I'm here because you guys are going to hire me type attitude. And it's like, no, we're not. Like, you may pass with flying colors on the technical side, but your HR side is terrible, and we're not going to.
Yeah.
We have other candidates.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, like you said, and that's exactly the way I heard it when I was getting into the industry and I was going for my jazz cadet interview, and I had gotten in touch with a corporate pilot, and they said all they want to know is, can they fly with you for 4 days and not want to kill themselves? So
yeah, I mean, realistically, like I did hiring at my old flight school, one of my old flight schools, and that was my thing. Like, could we hang out after work and have a beer?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And Alex, recently I spoke to someone who, I think I was at a restaurant, and they were telling me that they want to be a pilot, and I referred them to your old flight school. I said, go take a discovery flight, go here. They'll take you up and, spend a couple $100, get yourself an introductory flight, and then decide if you really want to continue this.
Well, and that's one of the things that people don't realize is, like, they may see it and they may see what we do, and they're like, I want to have that life. I want to have that schedule. I want to, make, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars with doing absolutely nothing, because everybody knows the autopilot flies the airplane, right?
That's right.
You should talk to my brother. He's got opinions.
So, but with that being said, like, they want it, and then they get up in the airplane for the first time, and they quickly realize, oh man, I get motion sickness, which you can overcome, but like, they may realize that it's not for them, or they go try to pursue a medical and they have stuff pop up on their medical that, it's a disqualifying factor,
right,
or something happens that, that it's not, it just isn't for them. So it's better to spend, less than $1,000 and, you get told no than to go into this whole thing. So yeah, Tony's right. Go do a discovery flight at your local flight school and see if it is for you.
Yep.
Now, I'll add something, that, because people always ask me, oh, what's it like being a pilot? What's the hardest thing? Takeoff, landing, and so on and so forth. And I go, it's some of those soft like skills you'd say, or things that aren't in the cockpit that for me, like when you think about sleeping or eating, what people just don't know is, like, you have to be able to sleep standing up, sitting down, laying flat, upside down, in a room that the bed's maybe too hard or too soft because it's not your bed. Are the pillows soft, hard? Is there a crack in the window? How much light is coming in? Or is there a breeze, underneath the door? Is the fan making a loud noise? Like, you got to just be able to overcome those things and get your rest. And, you wake up in the morning to go do your regional flight out of Timbuktu. It's like 3:00 in the morning because it's got to connect into the hub by 6:30 in the morning. And so you're up, there's no food, and you got to wait a few hours until you can get to a place where you can get something to eat. And like, those are the things that a lot of people just don't realize is that's part of the job, right?
Did you just happen to see my last sequence or something? Is that like, reading my hotels? Like,
yeah, exactly. It just, for me, it's one of those things, I got a good buddy of mine, and I say, dude, you'd have all the skills to be a pilot, but I don't know if you could live the lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things you got to be prepared.
Yeah. And that's another thing that people don't realize, that, like, yeah, you may see us, up in the cockpit and we're, having fun and joking around and we get to fly airplanes, which, I mean, at the end of the day, is one of the coolest things in the world. But
sure is.
Like, the lifestyle is not for everybody. Like, no. It's rough being away from home.
Yeah. I think we should cover that in a future show. Airline lifestyle choices,
I'd love to talk, but you know what? Rob's got the background right there, and when you put up with all the little things, that's the background that you get.
View.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%.
So it is just the best job in the world. But like, if we're here to educate people coming in, just what they can expect, those are some of those little soft things that a lot of people just don't talk about.
Yeah.
You don't always go into a city that has a 4-star Marriott. Sometimes you're going to the little Best Western that's got a couple rooms.
Bro, stop telling my sequences.
I know.
Well, let's just move on here because we are going a little over what my plan was to have the shows shorter this season. But yeah. Real quick, couple news items that I know we've talked about this on the show countless times over the past 4 or 5 years. But this one kind of hit me. We've been talking about this age 67 rule, how, it's going to happen. It's going to happen, and it's kind of like we joke about this out on the line too. It's like, hey, if they change it tomorrow, you're going to stay, you're going to retire. But there's a new article by Reuters by David Shepardson, dated February 5th. I'll put a link in the show notes. It's entitled, "The FAA Warns U.S. Congress Against Hiking Airline Pilot Retirement Age." It goes on to say that the head of the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration told Congress in a letter on Monday that lawmakers should not raise the mandatory retirement age of airline pilots to 67 from 65, saying it should first be allowed to conduct additional research. It is crucial to provide the agency an opportunity to conduct research and determine mitigations, FAA Administrator Mike Whitaker said in a letter first reported by Reuters. The U.S. Senate Commerce Committee is eyeing a potential hearing on Thursday to consider its own version of the aviation bill to extend the authorization of the FAA. When it comes to raising a pilot's retirement age, the FAA has made clear and specific, and safety analysis must come first. That has not happened, says Senator Maria Catwell, the committee chair. Aviation safety is paramount, and now is not the time to take a shortcut, she said. The U.S. House in July voted 351 to 69 on an aviation reform measure that would hike the mandatory age of retirement to 67. We strongly encourage proceeding that type of change with appropriate research so that the FAA can measure any risk. A separate letter from Transportation Security Pete Buttigieg to Congress on January 26 said the FAA currently has no data to support such an increase to the retirement age. He warned that raising the age to 67 would be above the international standard and will have consequences for U.S. air carriers. Congress last year failed to pass the FAA bill before the September 30th deadline and has voted twice to temporarily extend the agency. The current expiration date is in early March. Airlines for America, a group representing American Airlines, United Airlines, Delta Airlines, and Southwest Airlines, declined to comment. The Airlines Pilots Association opposes raising the retirement age and said such a move could cause airline scheduling and pilot training issues and require the reopening of pilot contract talks. The group praised Whitaker's letter. Current international rules will still prevent pilots older than 65 from flying in most countries outside the United States. The Regional Airline Association supports the pilot age hike, saying it allows retention of more experienced captains who can in turn fly alongside and mentor new first officers, helping to stabilize attrition. The Senate bill was previously held up by a dispute over whether to change the pilot training requirements imposed after the February 2009 crash of Colgan Air Flight 3407 near Buffalo, New York. It killed 50 people, the last major U.S. passenger airline fatal crash. That issue appears to have been resolved. So this, again, a story in Reuters about the age 67 rule. Now, we've been talking about this for quite a while, saying that it's going to happen, it's not going to happen. I still think it might happen in the U.S. because the airlines they're going to lobby and push hard for it. But the international rules will hold up because, as we've discussed before, how do you pay a captain who maybe wants to fly for 2 more years, who's a wide body captain? How do you pay them to not fly wide body stuff? I mean, you're going to give them wide body pay to fly narrow body. It just doesn't really make sense.
You don't. That's the whole thing. Like, I get what they're saying. The regionals support it, and I can kind of see it. Like, we're hurting for captains. So, like, if we can get some experienced guys coming in and 67 gives us 2 more years out of a captain, awesome. That's great. Because, we're hemorrhaging pilots. Once they hit, upgrade time, they're going to everywhere else. But is it anything good? No, it's going to be a Band-Aid to the solution of what happened in 2008. 2009 when they raised it to 65. All it's going to do is Band-Aid it for another 2 years.
Yeah, kicking the can down the road for 2 years is definitely not the answer. So there are many pros and cons to this debate. I just wanted to share that with all of you. Thank you so much for bearing with us as I read through that. But yeah, this is actually the first time I read anything that says the FAA opposes it. So usually that'll definitely delay this process for a long time to come.
As it should.
Because, they're just here to help.
We're not happy till you're not happy.
I believe it was Ronald Reagan who said, beware of any government official that comes to your door and says, we're here to help.
Yeah.
Rob, did you want to add anything to that? I just read that article and it said that, the FA in 67.
I'm sorry, my internet cut out and I missed half the article.
Just basically saying the FA opposes the H-67. And I was saying we've been talking about this a long time. And there's reasons pro and con that the Regional Airline Association wants. They're supporting it because they want to have more senior captains mentoring younger FOs. So I don't know. I think I've expressed my feelings on this a couple podcasts ago, but I'm kind of on the fence about it. I think when you look at it from that point of view, I'm not sure 2 years experience more is going to, make that big of a difference in, passing along experience to the younger airmen. I think that the 2 years difference, age 67, should be an option for the individual. And I think it's something that, if you're healthy enough, if you got the cognitive ability and you've got the desire, it should be available to you. But on the other hand, I also understand the airlines' point of view, especially the unions. I mean, that just opens up a whole new can of worms with seniority and bidding and contract negotiations, maybe.
Yeah. If you have because I think I'm not 100% sure about all the regulations overseas in other countries, but I don't think they allow flying over the age of 65. So what do you do with a 777, 787 pilot who is in those shoes? Do they?
You're going to pay him to stay home, basically. He's going to cash out all his vacation and get paid for 2 more years to stay home. Is basically what they're going to do. I mean, that's what I want.
So it's just. Right. But we're just not ready for that. And I don't think we really would be able to come to a agreeable solution to that in a timely manner to, just because the way things have gone negotiation wise, just to get a contract every year. Right. You know what I mean? And this would be a big thing. This would be a really big change in contractual stuff. So I don't know. That's how I feel. It's right now in its current state. I don't know. I think it's fine. Leave it alone. Don't do anything. But
so should we put it in the book? Put it in the red book. Age 65 will remain 65.
I think they should. I think they should revisit this in 32 years.
If it ain't broke, don't retire. Fix it.
That'll be fine with me.
That way I can get 2 more years, but I don't have to suffer the seniority loss.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Nice. Well,
but the other thing, I'm sorry to keep beating this dead horse here, but the real reason why they wanted to do this, and I'm pretty sure that we said this during the article. Again, my internet cut out, but the real reason why they wanted to do this, I think it started with the pilot shortage.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That was the real catalyst of this whole, revisiting the age 67 thing. And like everything that turns political, which it's obviously political at this point because it's going through, Congress or whatever. Mm-hmm. Now it's turning into, we want to train the younger people. Well, that's not why we started talking about it.
No.
The real reason is we don't have enough pilots. People are not getting into the profession because of, yada, yada, yada reason. So anyway.
And we've talked about that on the podcast before that, you're telling a kid, whether they go to college or not, hey, you want to go be an airline pilot? Cool. Go take out this $120,000 loan and, start your career. Like that's a tough pill to swallow, even if you have funding and a good credit score and all that stuff to back you. Like, you're not going to get a kid, and I'm going to use this just to say it, like, you're not going to get a kid from the inner city who dreams to be a pilot, and yet they don't come from money. They don't have relatively good, decent stuff around them for them to go, yeah, you know what? I can do this. It's not going to happen.
Well, the programs, we're starting to see that more and more of these flight schools associated with airlines coming into fruition. And I know, I think we were talking in between podcasts where I had a text stream going back and forth about, hey, did you hear about United's Aviate? They're having some issues over there. So, it'd be interesting to see what happens over the next course of probably 5 to 10 years with pilots. Maybe we'll get a lot of people wanting to be a pilot. I know we have how many thousands of people crossing the border every day. I mean, hey, they're potential pilots, right? Put them on a path to citizenship. Become an airline pilot. We'll handle that shortage, or an air traffic controller.
Yeah, but I mean, that's. I mean, it could be a little. You might be trying to make it a little humorous there, but that's true. I mean, there's some people, coming through these borders. I mean, we actually interviewed one of our very own captains. I forget her name. She's based in Miami.
Mm-hmm. Adelia.
Mm-hmm. Adelia coming to the country on her father's back, crossing the Rio Grande.
And now she's a captain at Legacy Airlines out of Miami and living the dream.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's all in the world.
Yeah.
So it can happen.
It can happen. Well, one last article before we kind of wrap it up for today. I was flying an airplane with Brian, and one of the flight attendants said, hey, did you hear what happened? We were delayed because an airplane went off the runway in Dallas. And we're like, wait, what? So I immediately went to Google, and I was like, I can't find anything on it. And come to find out, it actually happened. Simply Flying reported on it very recently. I'll put a link in the show notes. Brake issues cause American Airlines Boeing 737-800 to overrun a runway in Dallas. And you're thinking, wait a minute. Dallas runways are like 2 miles long, 10,000 plus feet, 12,000 feet. What the heck? Yeah, it was on 17 left, 17 left. So
the shortest runway.
The shortest runway is out in the boonies, and yes, it had been raining. The runway was wet. But let's find out what they reported. It said in the article by Channing Reed, dated just 17 hours ago, so the 12th of February, that a Boeing 737-800 operated by American Airlines reportedly experienced a runway excursion while landing at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport over the weekend. The aircraft did not sustain any damage, but suffered from deflated tires. An issue with the aircraft's brakes is believed to be the cause, resulting in the plane coming to a halt past the runway's end. The National Transportation Safety Board has opened an investigation. According to the Aviation Herald, the aircraft registration 991 Alpha November was operated as American 1632 from Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport on Saturday. Data from FlightAware shows that the aircraft left the gate, Charlie 33, at 1707, which was 8 minutes early from its original departure time of 1717. Why that? Why does anybody care? Whatever. Taxiing to runway 19, it was airborne 14 minutes later at 1721. Again, don't care. Heading south over the Potomac River. Oh, wow. The 737 then turned west and reached its cruising altitude of 26,000 feet 15 minutes later. Who writes this stuff,
solid
man?
Reporting here.
Absolutely.
Who is writing this artitle? This is just the flight details.
This is a Channing Reed. It's like an article I wrote in junior high. Sorry, Mr. Reed. Sorry. Just a podcaster. The remainder of the flight was uneventful, although the aircraft gradually decreased its altitude.
The remainder of the flight was uneventful, then why are we in this article? Sorry, go ahead. Continue.
No, yeah, exactly. Its altitude throughout its 3-hour journey. No, this is not Gilligan's Island. 1 hour and 6 minutes into the flight, the crew descended to 24,000 feet, only to descend another 2,000 feet to 22,000 feet.
He missed out a detail, Tony. He didn't say he descended at pilot's discretion.
That's right. That's
240.
right. That's right.
Sorry, this guy's way off.
He's missing the mark here.
Yeah, a lot of detail.
About a half hour later, this was likely due to increased headwinds, as the flight data shows the aircraft was flying at around 375 miles per hour. Again, don't care. Confirming the incident, 2 hours and 40 minutes into the flight, the plane began its initial descent and was lined up for its final approach onto runway 17 left at DFW 25 minutes later. Man, I'm having a good time with this one. Landing at 1942 local time, November 991 Alpha November, overran the runway's end and stopped in the runway end safety area, according to the Aviation Herald. An American Airlines spokesperson confirmed the incident to Simply Flying on Sunday, citing that the issue was with the aircraft's brakes. They were quoted as saying, on February 10th, American Airlines Flight 1632, its service from Washington, D.C., DCA to Dallas-Fort Worth, DFW, experienced a braking issue on landing at DFW. The flight landed safely at 7:41 Central Time with 99 customers and 6 crew members on board. Over 70 feet past the runway, the plane reportedly landed at a speed of 152 knots or 174 miles per hour in the touchdown zone, which is about 1,706 feet down the runway. It began to slow down, decelerating through 132 knots when it was around 3,200 feet down the runway. At 5,180 feet down the runway, the aircraft was still moving at about 90 knots. It slowed to about 40 knots, reaching 8,000 feet down the runway, which has reportedly only 360 feet from the end of the runway. Traveling at 27 knots, the plane crossed the runway end and eventually stopped 75 feet further in the runway end safety area. Although that area is a paved surface, the 3 main tires were deflated, according to the local witnesses. As a result, the aircraft had to be towed to the apron. It arrived at the gate at Charlie 2 at 21:11, 1 hour and 14 minutes after its scheduled arrival time. No injuries were reported. We are fully cooperating with the NTSB in this investigation, a spokesperson explained. New tires and repairs to the aircraft's braking system likely occurred on Sunday, as the aircraft is scheduled to re-enter service on Monday. According to FlightAware, November 991 Alpha November is expected to perform 5 flight legs on Monday. Expected. Performing turns at Raleigh, Colorado Springs, before it finishes its day, the flight to New Orleans. Well, isn't that special? Well, that's some solid reporting right there. Yeah. Now,
I mean, the long and short of it was that they went off the end of the runway.
Yeah, I could have probably written this as follows. This airplane landed in the touchdown zone, slowed, and then didn't stop, and at 40 knots, egressed the far end of the runway and stopped in the overrun area.
What day did this happen?
This
happened. Hold on, let me tell you. It happened on. Well, wait, hold on. It was they left C-33 at 17:07, 8 minutes early. They crossed the Potomac and then they reached. Oh, sorry.
How many fortnights ago?
So it happened Saturday night, and they repaired it Sunday, and it flew probably today, Monday.
You know, this is just the FlightAware data. I mean, they have no idea.
100%.
But you know what? Well, it is interesting. If you grab and extrapolate the information of the speeds and time, you might actually be able to pick up on some deceleration numbers, and you'd know whether they just touched down long and hit the brakes and just, you know what I mean, or whether they were quite decelerating as quick as they possibly could. So
now, Rob,
you got to figure they went off the runway. The easiest thing they could have done in that situation is they could have gone around if they notice anything going wrong.
Well, can you go around? Because once you touch down, they touch down in the Amy Point markers. Okay, they've touched down 2,000 feet, less than 2,000 feet down the runway. Okay, what happens as soon as you wait on wheels? You get spoiler deployment. Once the spoilers are deployed, SOP dictates that a go around is not authorized. So they can't always go around. Okay,
True.
So now the airplane,
or once you also initiate thrust reverser too.
Yeah, that's true too.
That's another one. So it's possible. Now, it didn't say in this article, as detailed as it was, it did not say if...
Because FlightAware didn't have that information.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And that's basically what they're doing. They're just, putting words to the FlightAware data. That's all they're doing.
Yeah.
It's not really reporting. It's whatever.
It'd be interesting to hear what the FOQA data comes up with.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's really where the truth is going to come out. Was an auto brake system activated, and at what level was it on? Was that system failed? Did they get an ECAM or ICAS message indicating that of a auto braking failure? Did they go to manual brakes? Did they use thrust reverse? Was it deployed? Was it working appropriately? When you get to that far into the runway, I mean, most people get off at that taxiway where you can take the route to get down to the south route. Around,
I forget what it is. It's like
Juliet
Quebec
or
4,
like that,
Quebec 5, or whatever it is, to go on the extra scenic route in Dallas.
Right. And that's about, I think, 1,000 or 1,500 feet from the end of the runway. So most people are slowed to less than 40 knots at that point. Why were they so fast? They were like 90 knots going past that point and then going off the edge of the runway at 45 knots and then blew the tire, blew the air out of the tires.
Now we're going to start speculating, and now we're going to start
which we don't want to do. But like, why was the air out of the tires? Were the brakes hot? What's going on? So there's so many unanswered questions here. We can sit here and guess, but until we get the final report with the flight data, as Rob mentioned, we really don't know what happened. So originally I read another report that came out from another source that said they landed 1,000 feet from 1,000 meters from the down the runway.
End of the runway.
That's 3,000. Yeah, that's like more than halfway down the runway. There's no way anyone would have done that. I mean, well, I can't say that for sure, but I mean, if you're not in the touchdown zone, it's a mandatory go around. It sounds like they touched down. They had some kind of issue. We're going to find out what happened. And if if it's something like the captain's water bottle fell underneath the pedals and they couldn't, we don't know.
Seriously, dude.
Yeah, it could happen.
There's things that could happen like that.
It could happen, right?
Yeah.
So we'll keep an eye on this. Just a little heads up, a little bit of a debate on what happened here on the next opportunity that we get some actual reporting.
Yeah. But it's important, like we've been talking about, it's important to wait for the facts. You know, obviously this article,
it's full of facts, Rob.
Facts.
Come on.
Yeah. Oh, it's full of facts.
Yeah. Isn't that an old machine? Anybody have fax machines anymore? But
I think
no, I like
it's important, right?
Fake facts.
1 hour and 6 minutes into the flight, it descended to 24,000 feet and only descended another 2,000 to 22,000 feet about half an hour later.
Pilot's discretion.
Yeah. Yeah, he has no access to the FOQA data, no access to the cockpit voice recorder.
And this is a reputable source, too. I get a lot of stuff from Simply Flying, and usually it's, I'm sorry, Mr. Reed. Don't mean to be so critical, but hey, it's a free country. What are you going to do? But anyway, let's wrap up the show here and just say thank you so much to all of you. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Brian, for joining us today. Anybody want to say anything before we wrap it up?
Nope. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Okay.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to have you, Rob. Please help us by sharing this podcast online and with your friends. Be sure to subscribe, follow the Squawk Ident podcast on whatever platform you are listening on. We also love receiving your listener feedback. You can send us an email or even audio feedback via our website at aviatortony.com. That's Alpha Victor, the number 8, Romeo Tango Oscar November Yankee.com. There you're going to find There you'll find audio archives, photos from the flight line, guestbook photo tab, Squawk Ident Pot Shop, and much, much more. You can also contribute financially to the program right from our homepage. Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram users can find us under Squawk Ident Podcast. And I just want to say one final thank you to all of you for taking the time to listen to these grateful aviators. Keep the dirty side down out there. Be safe and take care of each other. Bye, y'all.
All right, we'll see you.
Yeah.
All right. I got to say this. So I think Brian was with me this last flight. I'm monitoring guard, and I hear, to all you aviators out there monitoring guard, I just want to tell you, I love you all. And I went, oh my God. So I push the button. I get on guard and I go, aw, thanks. And then I hear the same voice come back and go, I love you too.
Strange people out there, man.
Hey, it's a play. It's a positivity. Come on, man.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I'm gonna hit some buttons.
I gotta go. I can smell dinner.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Tony, thank you for having me. Appreciate it, guys.
Okay,
Thanks,
Brian,
Tony.
I'll be in touch with you, Brian, about what's next. And
Sounds great.
okay,
Awesome,
so
guys.
thank you,
right.
thank your wives for allowing
Yep.
me to steal you guys away.
Yep.
All right, see you.
All right. See ya.
Bye. Get some rest, Rob.
See you, fellas. All right, man. Take care. Fly
Say yes.
safe.
Do you know anything about planes?
I flew in the war a long time ago. I wouldn't know anything about it.
Do you know anything about planes? Do you know anything about planes?
Can you fly this airplane and land it?
No, not a chance. No, not a chance. No, 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 not a chance.
Roger. Huh? Roger. Right. Request vector. Over. What?
Do you know anything about planes?
Clearance, Clarence. Roger, Roger. What's our vector, Victor?
The elite. Best of the best. We'll make you better. We'll make you better.
Do you know anything about planes?
Oh, jeez. Oh, you kill me. You really do.
Do you know anything about planes?
Captain, how soon can you land? I can't tell. You can tell me, I'm a doctor. No, I mean, I'm just not sure.
Do you know anything about planes?
Can you fly this plane and land it?
It's an entirely different kind of flying. Do you know anything about planes?